welcome everybody. Today we have a real treat from the tech sector. We've got Miss Jackie, who's got a lot of years of experience in HR, and I wanted to get her on the podcast for the mere reason I wanted her to just give us her expertise in the industry and to help each one of us become better candidates, better employable candidates when we present ourselves in the job market. So Jackie, welcome. Thank you for joining us. It's a treat to have you here.
Thank you, Natasha.
I think let's start off by asking, tell us a little bit about why you went into HR.
Why did I go into HR? I don't think I knew that I was going into HR when I studied. I did a general psychology and industrial sociology degree. And I started in those days what they called a personnel department. I was in the personnel department for a while, and it was actually a tire factory. And one of the guys said, please come and work in the industrial relations department. And I think that's probably where my love of people and understanding all the different aspects of HR started growing. And that's where I started. And then over the years, I branched out a little bit until I ended up at the company that I'm at for the last 35 years, doing the full generalist HR function. And over the years, things have changed a lot. We had to grow. We've had to change the way we do things. And I guess HR is an evolving department. And that's what I really enjoy, changing and just making things happen with people and managers.
I think just for the audience to note, I have had the honor of working with you for a while now. And I think what you do really well, and I've said this to you many times before, is that HR is not just your title. It's something you do every day. So whether we see you in the common areas or at the water cooler or at the coffee machine or whatever, you carry HR with you. You've always been fair. You've always been just. But I think one of the main things that you've been is approaching. So I think it's a good tip also for the audience to note that if you decide to go into a career, it must become your lifestyle. It's not just a title that you work, toward for a certain period of time.
And I think across all levels as well. It's, although you're dealing with the company and you also representing the staff, and it's from the lady who's doing the tea right up to top senior management and directors, that you have to make sure that everybody's in line and it's fair process that's being followed at all times. So I do try to make sure that I'm the custodian of those situations.
I think give us a little bit of a breakdown in tech. I know you interview people all the time, like I do, but tell me from your perspective, what do you think separates a good candidate in tech from a great candidate?
I think tech, because it's so now and happening and also is changing every day, nothing stays the same. When we interview tech candidates, you're looking for a person that is going to be able to judge a situation fast, and particularly when you're under pressure, because nobody waits for anything. With that comes the ability to be very agile and think on your feet. You have to be accountable. You have to own situations. And those are the kind of people that we look for, the can-do attitude, and people who think more about implementing a system to make things work rather than just viewing it as a task. In the old days, we had job descriptions. Now, you've got to just get on with it, and whatever comes your way during the day, you have to make sure that you are putting in systems and making things work efficiently.
Yeah, I think you mentioned such key points, but I think one of them is attitude. Do you think that it really matters the type of attitude a candidate has?
I think attitude is absolutely key. It is one of the only traits that if you don't have a good or a great attitude, then you are never going to be able to fit into an environment that's constantly changing and moving. You'll always come up blaming something or making an excuse. So you have to have a great attitude, you have to be agile, and you have to have that, the way about you that you are going to make things happen.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the skills that nobody tells us about that we need to have in tech. So we said attitude, we said agility. Anything else that you can think of that comes to mind?
I think you must be able to articulate yourself well. You have to be able to come up with a solution. You have to be able to have solutions.
Okay.
So it's not just a task and what am I going to do? You have to be able to come up with a solution and offer solutions.
Yes. Is there any interview stories? Like I said in the beginning, you've interviewed a lot of people. Is there any good interview stories and not so good interview stories? If you'd like to tell us about.
I think for me, one of the greatest interview stories is when we interview I call it the blank canvas, and that's on a very basic level. When we interview our learnership group, they come fresh out of school, they've got nothing,
Yeah.
and that is just absolutely great. And to understand the environments that they come from, most of them have so much passion. They are just waiting to absorb and to learn what the company can offer. And the questions that they ask are sometimes very entertaining. But I don't have any sort of stories that haven't gone like real well. I think there was one time, and I wasn't interviewing, it was my an MD at the time, but he honed in on a young lady's tattoos.
Yeah.
And he proceeded to ask her about the tattoos that she had, and they went a little bit pear-shaped. We got a written complaint about a personalized question like that. So from then onwards, it's personal questions we don't do. We stay away from that.
What should candidates do now wanting to get a tech to stand out a little bit? So if you pick up the candidates, I know you have a lot of direct contacts where people contact you directly on a particular role. Sometimes there is no roles and they just intro themselves to you. What are some of the candidates that have stood out in terms of their approach to you?
I think it's candidates that come with huge amounts of certifications that they've done themselves. And they haven't been sent to go and get certs. They've done it. They've gone online. And they've got the paperwork to prove. That's also always really good. Degrees, it always helps. It always gets a foot in the door. Diplomas, but again, I think it's attitude and outcomes. How can you resolve things?
Yeah. And I think I hear you say, what value am I bringing to the company rather than what can the company do for you?
Yes.
And I think candidates really need to know in tech and in any other space, we need to understand what value are we bringing. What problems can I solve? What are the current problems? What problems can I solve? And I think the attitude of, let me be teachable, let me also learn in this role, let me be agile enough to pivot if something is not, working. But what value can I add? And what value and I think value is not something that you can talk about just at the interview. It means you have to walk the walk every day. You have to show it. Yeah, you have to show it every day. And I think another thing for candidates that do stand out, I know for me especially, is people that are hungry enough to not just send a generic contact. Pick up the phone and follow up if you received their profile, and to show a little bit more interest, to do some research about who they're calling, etc., etc.
Yes.
Put themselves their best foot forward,
Yes.
so to speak.
And I think another good thing, I usually use it in closing when I interview is, you've said all of these good things to us. It's an interview situation of 10, 15, 20 minutes or whatever it is. But when I find the references, and I chat to your previous employer, are they going to tell me anything that's going to surprise me? And it's at that point that you know if there is something the person's going to let you know. And it's nice to see a confident person saying, you're most welcome. Call them and I'm sure they'll only tell you how I excel in getting involved and make things happen.
I think you touched on the really good point of honesty. And I think I've also come across many candidates that have been dishonest on their CV or with their pay structure. And so I want to address that issue that if you're leaving a current role for a better position and it's higher remuneration, rather be honest in terms of what your take home is currently. Because if that role is for you, the company will see that and they will make you a market related better offer. But what you do, like you just said, is you put yourself at a disservice if you lie on those documents and then you find out about it later, because then it shows that you cannot be trusted. Another thing we've come across when we look at people's profiles and you go do the checks, like you've just said now, is that often enough they gave a friend's details.
Yes.
Or a cell phone, or not a reporting manager's details, because they were too afraid of what the reporting manager will say. And I think honesty is so important because it shows whether you have integrity. It shows the type of employee that you can potentially be. If you do not be honest and say, listen, I messed up in this role for whatever reason, or I fell short in this role, or my manager and I didn't really see eye to eye, so this is what he or she will probably say to you, etc., etc. So I think honesty is really, really important.
It also shows pushback. And that's a good trait to have when you're joining a company. You must be able to push back at situations that aren't really going your way, but maturely.
Yes, of course. Because in business, that's what happens to us every day. Every day. Yeah, like you said, we have to be agile enough to pivot. I think we spoke about integrity, we spoke about honesty, we spoke about attitude. Do you think that degrees matter? Do you think that years of experience matter? In your experience, what do you think? Do you need to have a balanced approach of both, or what would you say is key in terms of skills and competence?
I think it's a balanced approach. It always wakes you up. You're able to give live examples of what you've managed to change and what you've managed to do. So experience always counts. Degrees, it's always a good backup. It often gets your foot in the door, and you sometimes find that people who have studied, or not necessarily a degree, but people who've certified themselves, who've done it for themselves, are the ones that are going to come forward and move out faster in a company. Yeah, but definitely a balanced approach. We don't all have the opportunity to study and do those kind of things. A lot of people that we interview start studying and the money runs out and they're unable to continue. And those are the kind of people that we would invest in and say, okay, you've come so far, how can we help you complete?
And I think that's so important for everybody to note. The degrees are good, like you said, if you have them. You also need to have a balanced approach of book smart versus street smart. To be able to function and be agile enough to pivot and what is like fire burning? Put out fires, put out fires daily in order to do, well in the environment that we work with it. So it's really important to have, like you said, a balanced approach on skill set as well as, academic papers. But I think what you've mentioned that was so key, tech companies today are looking for people with a positive attitude. And if you don't have those things, tech companies like yourselves are still willing to give people a chance with the right attitude.
Yes. And also when you are looking at somebody and you're going to be hiring them, you also ask yourself the question, am I going to be able to trust this person if a situation arises and it's a sticky or tricky situation? Will I be able to trust this person's judgment? And will they, sort it out and raise it to me so that it's not a disaster before, we can get it totally solved.
I think the misconception is out there that if you in tech, you have to have like the data science degree, before you can come into a tech environment. I think it's good for people to note that that is not the case. As much as we look for an all-rounded individual, we look for somebody with potential that can grow with the business. Like you said, takes accountability, is honest. And I think receiving feedback is also the way we receive feedbacks is also key. Whether it's a managerial role, whether it's a individual role, I think you have to be able to work in a team. You have to be able to be open to receiving good and bad feedback because it's important for a person's growth as well. What are some of the things that turns you off in an interview that you get annoyed with?
I think it's a sloppy approach, a person who rambles, who doesn't give you a direct answer,
Right.
where you're sitting and you're going round and round in circles, not understanding. And also, if halfway into the interview you haven't formed an idea in your mind about what this person's been doing,
Yes.
then that would be off-putting. And yeah, you got to come dressed, you got to rock up as a professional, and you got to be well groomed, and you got to you got to rock the part. Yeah, let's put it that way. And I think a person who hasn't tried or becomes sloppily dressed or sits down in the chair, doesn't sit up and engaged, and eye contact. Eye contact is very, very important.
And I think talking to what your passion is about a position, your purpose is about a role, some excitement is also good. But like you said, eye contact is really good. Show up before time. Do some research about who you're meeting, the company you're meeting. Please do some research about the role. Please don't show up and not know what role you applied for. And maybe your career trajectory is way higher than what the position is. But at least show up with all the information. Like you said, show up prepared.
Then ask a good question.
Yes. And I think also you want to be employed in a company that not just for the current role, but that is aligned with where your career wants to go. And I think the interview time is perfect to ask those sort of questions. Like where is this role going? What does the next 3, 6, 9 months look like? So that if you are, prepared to go, down that path. I like what you said about, being prepared because it's important to also give like use case examples. This is what I did previously. This is where it went, and I think be clear and concise about those sort of things. Is there anything else you can add that people need to focus on during the interview?
I think answer the question directly.
Right.
And it's always good to have an example of an achievement or something that you've implemented that you are able to share. That's always pretty impressive because then it enables the interviewer to ask an add-on question and see how far were you responsible for what you say and you did. Yeah.
I think it's also good for people to understand, please don't badmouth the previous company that you worked at. Because you don't know where you likely to meet people again. And it doesn't also look good to the new hiring team if that is how we communicate. Tell me a little bit about what sort of candidates impress you.
I think it's candidates that sit on the edge of their seat, are always interested in asking the questions. In an interview, it should be the candidate that's doing most of the talking and answering, not the interviewee.
Yes.
I believe in putting a question out and listening to the answer so that you can hear how they're articulating and how they think. It's important to try and understand how does a person think, how have they interpreted the question that you're asking, and how quickly are they going to get to the resolve. Because that's what you need in a business to move forward, and especially tech. You need somebody who's forward thinking, fast on their feet, and can come up with resolutions.
Tell me a little bit about, for instance, we're at the offer stage. You really like this candidate, and you're about to present an offer to them. What would be one or two things that stops that offer in terms of a mistake that the candidate may or may not have made, either at the profile, either in the delivery? What would that look like?
I think it's dragging out handing in pay slips if you are wanting to make an offer and the pay slips are not coming.
Right.
And taking too long to get back.
Right.
So, you'll put a 48-hour return, but a person who really likes what they see and wants to get involved in the company should have an overnight think and then can accept or reject.
And I think as an additional tip will be, as hungry as you are to get the interview, it's important that you show up prepared, and then if the company decides to make you an offer, to also treat that with the same sort of respect.
Yes.
Whether you appreciate the offer or don't, I think it's important to show respect, both ways. Say, for instance, if a candidate has a gap, in their CV, how should they address that? What is the right way to address it?
In terms of leaving out a couple of months?
Here, they've added it on their CV. Now you're asking them, the gap. I noticed there's a 6-month gap, for instance, on the CV. What would be the best way for them to address that in the interview?
I would say that would be honestly, to be upfront and honest about it. You often have situations where someone would have to go and take care of an ill member of the family, or there was maybe a birth of a child and coming back to work was a little bit too soon, so they needed a bit more time. Be upfront and honest about what took you away from the working environment and how quickly you can get back.
I think that's so important. I think we spoke a lot today about honesty and integrity, and just putting your best foot forward. But I think it's so important that everybody's authentic. Show up as yourself. That's the best version of you. Everybody else is taken, and do it well. So thank you, Ms. Jackie. Thank you so much for your time. I hope for our viewers this has been helpful to them. Please contact us on sales@urbanise.tech for more information, and we look forward to seeing you again for our next episode.
Thank you. Thank you very much.